The desert Mirage Motel sat like a faded postcard on the side of Route 66, its neon sign flickering erratically, a lone cactus outlined in green and red against the endless black of the desert sky. The air was thick with the scent of dry earth and mesquite, stirred by a restless wind that carried whispers of forgotten dreams. I stood in the doorway of room 8, my cigarette glowing faintly, its ember a tiny beacon in the dark. A truck roared past on the highway, its headlights slicing through the night before fading into the distance, leaving behind a low hum that settled into my chest. I exhaled, watching the smoke curl upward, blending with the stars I'd never bothered to name. My name's Clara. I'm telling you this because some nights are like wounds, they cut deep, and you carry them forever. That night was one of those. It was late June, the kind of heat that clings to you like a memory you can't shake, making your skin sticky and your heart restless. I'd been working this road for 8 years, from Texas to California, each motel a temporary shelter, each room a stage for someone else's escape. I was good at it, good at being what they wanted, good at keeping my soul tucked away where no one could find it. But that night wasn't about what I was good at. It was about him. I flicked my cigarette to the gravel, crushing it under the heel of my scuffed boots. The motel's office light glowed faintly across the lot, where Josie, the night clerk, was probably sipping coffee and flipping through a magazine. I adjusted my dress, emerald green, worn at the seams, clinging just enough to catch the eye, and checked my phone. 9:59 p.m. He wasn't late, not yet, but the waiting always set my nerves on edge. His text had come through an hour ago, short and strange, room 8, 10 p.m. keep it quiet. No name, no details, just a time and a place. I'd been in this game long enough to know that meant something, maybe trouble, maybe something more. I stepped back inside, the door creaking shut, sealing me in with the stale air and the ghosts of nights I tried to forget. Room 8 was like every other motel room on this road, peeling wallpaper with a faint cactus pattern, a bed that sagged under the weight of its own history, and a lamp casting a warm, amber glow that softened the room's harsh edges. The curtains were thin, red, swaying slightly as the desert wind slipped through a crack in the window. The air smelled of old smoke and dust, a scent that clung to everything, including me. I sat on the edge of the bed, catching my reflection in the dusty mirror across the room. My dark brown hair was pulled back, loose strands framing my face, and my amber eyes stared back, sharp but tired, holding stories I'd never share. Not even with you. I lit another cigarette, the match's flame dancing briefly before settling. The clock on the nightstand read 10:03. Waiting always brought the past creeping back, uninvited, like dust through the cracks. I thought about my mother, her hands calloused from years of waitressing, telling me to dream big, to get out of Amarillo before it trapped me. I thought about the night I left, 19 and desperate, my backpack stuffed with clothes and a sketchbook I hadn't touched in years. I thought about my first night working this job, the way I'd stood in a motel bathroom, promising myself it was just temporary. That was 8 years ago, and the road had a way of making temporary feel like forever. A soft knock at the door snapped me out of my thoughts, my heart kicking up, not from fear, but from something sharper, something alive. I stood, smoothing my dress, and crossed the room, my boots clicking softly on the linoleum. I opened the door, and there he was. He stood in the doorway, framed by the neon cactus's glow, his face half hidden in shadow. He was lean, not tall, with a faded denim shirt and hair the color of charcoal, tousled like he'd been driving with the windows down. His eyes were blue, deep and piercing, like the sky just before a storm, carrying a weight I couldn't name. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch, like he was seeing past the dress, the makeup, the walls I'd built to survive. "You're Clara?" His voice was low, steady, with a faint roughness that spoke of long nights and longer roads. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. "You're late." He glanced at the clock as he passed, his boots scuffing softly on the carpet. "Road was rough." "Sorry." I closed the door, the latch clicking, and the room felt smaller, the air thicker, like it was holding its breath. He didn't sit, just stood by the window, his hands in his pockets, staring out at the neon sign as it flickered, its hum a steady pulse in the quiet. I watched him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers twitched slightly, like he was holding on to something he couldn't let go. He wasn't like the others, no bravado, no rushed agenda, just a quiet that felt like it could shift the world. "Want a drink?" I asked, nodding toward the bottle of whiskey on the dresser. It was cheap, but it did the job, filling silences and loosening tongues. He shook his head, his eyes still on the window. "Not tonight." I sat on the bed, crossing my legs, trying to read him. He was a mystery, and mysteries were dangerous in my line of work, too many unknowns, too many ways to get hurt. I lit another cigarette, the smoke curling around me like a barrier. "You got a name?" I asked, expecting him to dodge it. He turned then, his eyes meeting mine, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "Luke," he said, the name soft but deliberate, like he'd chosen it for me. I raised an eyebrow, leaning back. "Luke. That real?" He smiled, just a flicker, but it was enough to make my chest ache. "Real enough." We sat in silence for a while, the neon sign's hum blending with the distant growl of a truck on the highway. I was used to silences, but this one was different, alive, heavy with things unsaid. I watched his hands, still in his pockets, strong and steady, like they'd held something precious once and never forgotten how. I wondered what they'd touched, what they'd lost. I wondered why I cared. "You don't belong here," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet like a spark in the dark. I laughed, sharp and bitter, the sound echoing in the small room. "You don't know me." "I know enough." His eyes were on me now, steady, unyielding, like he could see the cracks in my armor. "This place, it's not where you're meant to be." I wanted to snap back, to tell him he had no right, but his words hit something deep, something I'd buried under years of motel rooms and late nights. I looked away, my throat tight, the cigarette burning low. "You don't know what I'm meant for." He didn't answer, just watched me. And in that moment, I felt exposed, like he'd peeled back every layer I'd built to survive. I stood, needing to move, needing to break the spell. I walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside, the neon light painting my skin in shades of green and red. The desert stretched out beyond, vast and unforgiving, and I wondered if it would ever let me go. "Why are you here, Luke?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be, barely audible over the hum of the sign. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were careful, like he was stepping around something fragile. "I'm passing through. Looking for something I lost." I turned, leaning against the windowsill, studying him. "That's not an answer." He smiled again, that small, fleeting thing that made my heart stumble. "It's all I've got." We talked as the night wore on, not about the big things, not about the truths that hung between us, but about the small ones that filled the spaces. He told me about a canyon in Utah where the stars felt close enough to touch, about a diner in Oklahoma with the best pancakes he'd ever had. I told him about the time I'd found a stray cat outside a motel in Arizona, how I'd fed it scraps and wished I could keep it. We laughed, and it felt like a gift, like something I hadn't earned. His eyes softened when he looked at me, like he was seeing someone I'd forgotten how to be. Hours passed, the whiskey untouched, the bed a silent witness to a night that wasn't what I'd expected. He didn't touch me, didn't try, but every glance, every pause, felt more intimate than any touch I'd known. I found myself imagining what it would be like to reach for his hand, to feel the warmth of his skin, to ask him to stay. But I didn't. That wasn't how this worked. As dawn crept through the curtains, painting the room in soft grays, he stood, pulling a small, folded piece of paper from his pocket. He held it out to me, his fingers brushing mine, warm and steady, sending a shiver through me I couldn't explain. "Keep this," he said, his voice low, urgent. "Don't open it yet." I took it, my heart racing. "What's in it?" He didn't answer, just looked at me, his eyes tracing my face like he was memorizing every line. Then he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut, leaving me with the hum of the neon sign and a weight in my hand I didn't understand. I stood there, clutching the paper, my mind a storm of questions. Who was Luke? Why had he come? And what was in that note, burning against my palm like a secret I wasn't sure I could carry? The desert Mirage Motel faded into the haze of my memory, but that night clung to me like the scent of rain on the wind. I carried the note in my purse, its edges softening with every day I didn't open it. I told myself I'd forget him, that he was just another drifter passing through, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw his, blue, stormy, haunted. I saw the way his hands stayed still, like they were afraid to reach for something they'd lost. I saw the way he looked at me, like I was more than the girl in room 8, more than the life I'd built to survive. Weeks passed, and I kept moving, motel to motel, town to town, the endless stretch of Route 66 a map of my survival. I worked, I smiled, I played the part, but it felt different now, like I was acting in someone else's life. The men I met were the same, truckers, loners, men with secrets they didn't share, but none of them were him. None of them saw me the way he had, like I was a story worth reading. I started to wonder if I'd imagined him, if he was just a flicker of neon light, a mirage born from the desert and my own longing. It was early August when I saw him again, at a motel called the Sundown Rest, just outside Flagstaff. The air was cooler now, sharp with the promise of fall, and the neon sign above the motel flickered in a slow, mournful rhythm, casting a soft yellow glow over the parking lot. I was outside, sitting on the hood of my old Jeep, the metal cold against my thighs, smoking and watching the stars. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. I heard his footsteps before I saw him, the crunch of gravel like a heartbeat in the dark. He stepped into the light, same denim shirt, same charcoal hair falling over his eyes. He didn't look surprised to see me, like he'd known I'd be here, like the road had pulled us back together. "Clara," he said, my name soft and heavy, like it carried a weight I couldn't see. I slid off the hood, tossing my cigarette to the ground. "Luke." He smiled, that small, fleeting thing that made my chest ache. "You remembered. You're hard to forget." The words slipped out, raw and honest, and I looked away, embarrassed, the neon light painting my cheeks in shades of yellow. He stepped closer, stopping just out of reach, his hands in his pockets. The light caught the lines on his face, deeper now, like the road had carved them there. "I didn't mean to find you again," he said, his voice low, almost lost in the wind. "But I'm glad I did." I laughed, unsteady and sharp. "You don't just find someone on this road. You were looking. Maybe." His eyes met mine, and I felt that same pull, that same sense of being seen, like he could see the girl I'd been before the motels, before the nights that wore me down. Maybe I was. I wanted to ask him why, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I asked, "What do you want, Luke?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at me, his eyes searching, like he was looking for something I didn't know I had. "I want you to know you're not trapped here," he said finally, gesturing at the motel, the road, the life I'd been living. "I want you to believe you can be more." I turned away, staring at the highway, the lights of a passing truck blurring into streaks. "You don't get to decide what I am." "I'm not deciding." His voice was closer now, and I realized he'd moved, standing just behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. "I'm just telling you what I see." I turned to face him, my heart pounding, and for a moment, we were all there was, the neon sign, the desert wind, the space between us alive with something I couldn't name. I wanted to reach for him, to bridge that gap, but I didn't. Instead, I pulled the note from my purse, holding it up. "What's this, Luke? Why'd you give it to me?" He looked at the note, his expression unreadable. "It's a chance," he said. "But you have to choose to take it." I laughed, bitter and raw. "You don't know what I'm ready for." He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine, just for a second, and it was like a spark in the dark, lighting up every nerve in my body. "I know you're scared," he said softly. "So am I." Before I could respond, he pulled another piece of paper from his pocket, this one smaller, folded tightly. He pressed it into my hand, his fingers lingering against mine, warm and steady. "Read this one first," he said. "Then decide what to do with the other." I looked down at the paper, my heart racing. "What's in it?" "Truth," he said simply, and then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the parking lot, leaving me with 2 pieces of paper and 1,000 questions. I stood there, the papers heavy in my hands, the neon sign buzzing above me. I didn't open them, not yet. I was afraid, not of him, but of what he represented. A door, maybe, to a life I'd stopped believing in. I sat on the hood of my Jeep again, lighting another cigarette, the stars watching me like they knew something I didn't. The road stretched out before me, endless and uncertain, and I wondered if I'd ever find the courage to follow it. The Sundown Rest Motel was behind me now, but the papers stayed with me, tucked in my purse like secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to keep. I drove west, the road unfolding under my tires, the neon signs blurring into memories. I couldn't shake Luke, his voice, his eyes, the way he'd made me feel like I was more than the sum of my nights. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who sketched sunsets in her notebook, who believed in love and second chances. She was still there, somewhere, buried under years of motels and men, under the weight of choices I couldn't take back. Luke had seen her, somehow, and now he was asking me to find her again. I stopped at a motel called The Last Stop, just inside California. The neon sign was faint, its letters half burned out, casting a soft blue light over the parking lot. I sat in my room, the papers on the nightstand, the lamp's light warm and golden, like a memory. The air smelled of dust and salt, the ocean close now, its rhythm a steady pulse in the distance. I lit a cigarette, the smoke curling toward the ceiling, and stared at the papers, my heart pounding. I picked up the second paper, the one he'd given me at the Sundown Rest. It was small, folded tightly, the edges worn from being carried too long. I unfolded it, my hands shaking, and found a short note, the handwriting steady but hurried, like he'd written it in a moment of desperation. "Clara. My name's Luke, but there's more to it than that. I've been running from a life I broke, from people I let down. I saw you in room 8, and for the first time in years, I wanted to stop. You're not just a light in the dark, you're the kind of light that makes a man believe he can be better. I don't know if I can, but I need you to know you made me want to try." The other note is the rest of it. It's not just my story, it's a chance for yours to change. But it's up to you. Luke. I read it again, my eyes burning, my chest tight. Luke. He'd seen me, really seen me, in a way no one else ever had. I set the note down and reached for the first one, the one from that night at the desert Mirage. It felt heavier now, like it carried the weight of both our lives. I opened it, my breath catching, and found a single sentence inside: "Find me at the end of the line, Clara. I'll be waiting where the road meets the sea." Below it was an address, a pier in a town called Seaside's End, just a few hours away. I stared at it, my mind spinning. He was asking me to follow him, to leave this life behind, to take a chance on something I didn't understand. I thought about the road, the motels, the nights that had shaped me. I thought about my mother, how she'd told me to keep dreaming, even when the world tried to take it away. And I thought about Luke, his quiet strength, the way he'd made me believe I could be more. I packed my bag that night, the notes tucked safely in my purse. The Jeep's engine roared to life, and I drove west, the desert giving way to the ocean's salt and spray. The road felt different now, like it was leading me somewhere instead of just away. I thought about Luke every mile, his face sharper in my mind than the neon signs fading behind me. I thought about the life I was leaving, the weight of it falling away with every mile. Seaside's End was a quiet town, the kind of place where the ocean sang louder than the people. The address led me to a pier, weathered and gray, stretching out over the water like a hand reaching for something lost. I parked the Jeep and walked to the end, the wind cold against my skin, the waves crashing below. I waited, my heart pounding, but he didn't come. I stood there for hours, the notes in my hands, the ocean stretching out before me, endless and unforgiving. I realized then that he wasn't coming, that he'd never been coming. Maybe he was still running, from whatever he'd been running from that first night. Maybe he was a dream, a story I'd told myself to keep going. But as the sun sank into the sea, painting the sky in shades of fire and ash, I felt something settle inside me. I'd come here because of him, but I'd stay for me. I opened the first note again, reading his words one last time: "Find me at the end of the line, Clara. I'll be waiting where the road meets the sea." I folded it carefully and let it go, watching it flutter into the waves, carried away by the tide. The second note I kept, tucking it into my purse, a reminder of the girl I was finding again. I don't know if I'll ever see Luke again. I don't know if he was real, or if he was just a mirror, showing me the parts of myself I'd forgotten. But I'm here, at the end of Route 66, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm free. The road brought me to him, and he brought me to myself. And maybe that's enough,